Quinnen Williams has changed everything for the Dallas Cowboys.
Again, Rodgers in trouble again, and he's sacked again by Quinnen Williams. What a beast!
Really, he's a force that needs to be dealt with every single play.
And Quinnen Williams, he's one of the most disruptive defensive players in all of football.
Everything I do is about winning.
Everybody watching it go down thought they had just witnessed a player snap, and then the cameras turned away. But 5 seconds later, something happened that would change everything you think you know about Quinnen Williams. So why would Dallas bet on someone willing to crash out on his own coach like that? And why did Quinnen do it? To understand Matt, you first have to understand the impossible weight he had to carry since he was 12 years old. Quinnen grew up one of 4 children. His mother, Markeisha Henderson Williams, was a first-grade teacher, the center of the family, and Quinnen's best friend. She had already survived breast cancer once, but in the summer of 2010, it returned and spread to her liver. When Markeisha entered the hospital, the family believed she would recover. Quinnen and his siblings visited every day, but over the next 5 weeks, that confidence slowly disappeared. Markeisha never came home.
She'll be super happy for me, and she'll be super proud because she's seen the process since I was a little kid.
She unfortunately passed away in 2010 while still in her late 30s. Quinnen was only 12 years old.
Being in the NFL, it gives me a platform, the opportunity to tackle the different things that I want to tackle, like breast cancer awareness and just cancer awareness in general, because my mom passed away from cancer.
But before she passed away, his mother left him with one final instruction. You're going to be the one who makes sure everybody in the family stays together. Quinnen was losing the most important person in his life while being told that everyone else was going to be there. Quinnen had always been the smiling, outgoing kid, but after she died, he shut down and entered what he called
Dark mode.
His coaches offered him time away from football and admitted that they were walking on eggshells around him, but Quinnen refused to step away. He rarely showed what he was feeling. Instead, he attacked the weight room so relentlessly that coaches said that they could not keep him out even when the team was not lifting. The weight room could not change what happened at that hospital, but it gave Quinnen one thing he could still control: how much work he put in the next day. Little by little, the responsibility his mother left him was turning to discipline. At home, he helped look after his younger sister, Ciel, while the siblings leaned on one another. Years later, Quinnen would call himself the family's anchor. That promise did not shape who he became at home, though. Years later, it would follow him all the way to that sideline in New York. But before Quinnen could scream back at the NFL coach, he first had to learn how not to break when somebody screamed at him. At Winona High School, Quinnen played beside his brothers Quincy and Giovanni. People called their section of the field the Williams Zone. But during one blowout loss, Quincy screamed at the defense and gave his younger brother an especially loud earful. Quinnen came off the field crying, and his coach had to explain that he could not let criticism break him down so badly that he could no longer function during a game. Years later, fans would know the massive defensive lineman by a nickname that seemed to fit that moment almost too perfectly: Big Baby. But the name did not come from the tears. It came from the contradiction people saw every time they looked at it. A 300-pound destroyer with a youthful face, bright eyes, a wide smile, and an infectious laugh. The nickname captured who Quinnen was away from the field, but it did not capture what happened once the ball was snapped. As his career grew, people shortened his name to Q, and Quinnen began describing himself another way: Iron Man. He said that without the uniform, he was smiling, relaxed, and smooth like Tony Stark. But once the equipment went on, he became a machine. That is what made the moment with his brother Quincy so important. The kid people would one day call Big Baby was still learning how to control emotions powerful enough to overwhelm him. Years before television cameras caught Quinnen screaming back at the NFL coach, he was a kid who would become emotionally broken by somebody screaming at him. Away from the football, Quinnen still did not act like an intimidating 300-pound lineman he was becoming. His coach remembered him as somebody who hugged everybody. Then the balls would snap, and the kid who hugged everybody was trying to drive another human being directly into the quarterback. Gentle away from the football, violent between the lines, and most comfortable when people were depending on it. But carrying that responsibility did not mean anybody was going to hand him an opportunity. At Alabama, Quinnen would have to wait for someone to trust him with one. He redshirted in 2016 and spent 2017 buried behind future NFL players. Alabama won the national championship, but Quinnen had never started a college game. Then Jerome Payne left for the NFL and created an opening as nose tackle. Alabama's coaches did not come to Quinnen and ask him to move inside, but he recognized that waiting at defensive end could leave him stuck on the bench, so he volunteered. He added enough weight to survive double teams without losing his quickness. If it worked, he would finally get into the field. If it failed, he could disappear inside Alabama's loaded depth chart. That gamble changed everything. In his first career start, Quinnen recorded 3.5 tackles for loss. Then against third-ranked LSU, he took over with 10 tackles and 2.5 sacks in a 29-0 shutout. By the end of his only season as a starter, he had won that Outland Trophy and became a unanimous All-American. 2 years waiting, 1 season starting, That was all he needed once somebody trusted him with the job. But at the NFL Combine, Quinnen was about to show teams something that had nothing to do with trust. It had to do with what should have been physically impossible. At 303 pounds, Quinnen ran an unofficial 4.87 on his first 40-yard dash. That was already an outstanding time for a defensive tackle, and he was reportedly advised to keep it and skip the second attempt. The safe decision was to stop, but Quinnen ran again. This time he finished in an official 4.83 seconds, making him one of the fastest 300-pound defensive linemen ever measured at the Combine. NFL research later confirmed that only 3 defensive linemen weighing at least 300 pounds had run faster at the Combine since 2003. His 4.83 was also faster than the recorded Combine times of Baker Mayfield, Sam Darnold, Kirk Cousins, Matt Ryan, and Jimmy Garoppolo. At 303 pounds, Quinnen had just produced quarterback speed. 2 months later, the Jets selected him 3rd overall. His older brother Quincy went to Jacksonville in the 3rd round. Quinnen had just proven he could move like almost no man his size, but the NFL does not judge a 3rd overall pick by what he does in shorts. New York expected him to dominate immediately, and he did not. Quinnen recorded only 2.5 sacks as a rookie. He improved to 7 in 2020, and it finally looked like his breakout was coming. Then an off-season workout ended with a broken foot. Quinnen needed surgery and faced an 8 to 10 week recovery after already missing 6 games during his first 2 seasons. He returned and recorded 6 sacks in 2021, but he still had not become the unstoppable interior defender people expect. He was getting better, but good was not good enough. Then Jacksonville released Quincy and the Jets claimed him. The brothers who once controlled the Williams zones were suddenly playing together again on the same NFL defense. On October 3rd, 2021, both recorded sacks against Tennessee, becoming the first brothers on the same team to do that since sacks became the official statistic in 1982. The game happened during Breast Cancer Awareness Month, and both dedicated the moment to their mother. At Alabama, Quinnen wrote her name on his wrist tape, and he has an angel wearing number 92 tattooed on him because his mother never got the opportunity to wear his jersey. He had kept his promise to hold his family together, but professionally, one question still remained. Who's going to help Quinnen become the player that New York thought that they drafted? That is when Aaron Whitecotton entered the story. Whitecotton became the Jets defensive line coach in 2021, and Quinnen would later credit the techniques Whitecotton taught him with helping turn him from a good defensive tackle into an all-pro. The kid who once came off with the field crying when his brother yelled now had a coach who challenged him every day. And instead of breaking, Quinnen kept coming back. Whitecotton believed he would become one of the best defensive tackles in football, and he coached him that way. By 2022, the talent and the technique were finally coming together. Then Cincinnati beat that Jets blitz for a touchdown. New York had set extra defenders after Joe Burrow, but Quinnen believed the defensive line could create pressure while everybody else remained in cover. He was not asking Whitecotton for less responsibility. He was demanding his coach trust them with more. That was the part everybody saw. What they missed was the hug. Whitecotton later revealed that the camera turned away before viewers saw them embrace. 5 seconds after the argument, he said it was already all love. Quinnen called it a loud conversation, not a real fight. Neither man treated the disagreement like betrayal, and Whitecotton kept coaching. Quinnen kept listening. And that afternoon did not change Quinnen because he screamed at his coach. It changed everything because 5 seconds later, both men chose to go back to work. And then Quinnen backed up what he said. He exploded for 12 sacks, made his first Pro Bowl, and was named first team All-Pro. The player who wanted the defensive line to be trusted had delivered the best season of his career. And the coach he appeared ready to fight had helped him reach it. And the 5 seconds that nobody saw told the truth about both of them. After Quinnen's breakout, massive contract should have been an easy part. But while the other defensive tackles from his draft class received new deals, Quinnen skipped voluntary workouts, expressed his frustration publicly, and removed the Jets from his social media biography. The question was no longer whether Quinnen was good enough for New York. It was whether New York valued him enough to keep him. Then the Jets rewarded him with a 4-year, $96 million extension containing $66 million guaranteed. He continued making Pro Bowls and established himself as one of the best defensive tackles in football. But one thing never changed: the losing. During Quinnen's 7 seasons in New York, the Jets lost 75 of 108 games and never finished with a winning record. Quinnen had become an All-Pro and a $96 million player, but every season still ended without meaningful win. Then Aaron Whitecotton left New York. And here's the part nobody watching that sideline argument could have predicted. He went to Dallas. White Cotton joined the Dallas Cowboys as their defensive line coach of 2025, and 8 months later, Dallas reached the trade deadline at 3-5-1 with one of the worst defenses in the NFL. And Dallas was not merely struggling. Through the first 9 weeks, the Cowboys had allowed the 5th most rushing yards to running backs and ranked 4th worst against the run overall. Opponents were not being forced away from the ground game, they were attacking Dallas through it. The Cowboys didn't need another rotational lineman, they needed somebody capable of changing the entire front. And inside their own building was a coach who understood exactly what kind of player Quinnen Williams was. White Cotton called him a phenomenal person, a phenomenal player, and a hard worker. He also knew that the confrontation everybody remembered had never broken their relationship. On November 4th, Dallas sent Mozzie Smith, a second-round pick and the better of its 2 2027 first-round picks, to New York for Quinnen Williams. That is a massive price. But Dallas was not guessing about the player they were getting. The coach Quinnen once stood nose-to-nose with was now in Dallas waiting for him. When Quinnen arrived, White Cotton said coaching him again felt like riding a bike. There was no old grudge to repair because the relationship had never been broken. But there was no time for a slow adjustment. Dallas had surrendered premium draft capital, and his first game would test whether the gamble could change its entire defense. Then the Cowboys put Quinnen on the field against the Las Vegas Raiders. Quinnen finished with 4 tackles, with 5 quarterback hits and 1.5 sacks as Dallas won 33-16. One game could not repay the trade, but it immediately showed Dallas what it had been missing. And the run defense changed with him. Through Quinnen's first 3 games after the trade, Dallas allowed the first fewest rushing yards in the league after ranking 4th worst against the run through the first 9 weeks. But those numbers still did not fully explain what changed. Nextgen stats credited Quinnen with 29 pressures and a 16.3% pressure rate led all defensive tackles after week 10. Also, Odighizuwa explained it more simply. He elevates the whole defense. Quinnen finished 2025 with his 4th consecutive Pro Bowl selection. Quinnen's value to Dallas is not just his own production. Every offense facing Dallas has an uncomfortable choice to make. Either you block Quinnen with one player and risk him collapsing the pocket, or you send a second blocker and give the Cowboys rushers around him cleaner opportunity. There's no comfortable answer. His pressure stops quarterbacks from stepping forward, and it creates longer third downs and gives teammates cleaner matchups. And that's why Dallas paid more than his sack total suggested. But the reunion lasted only 7 days. After the reunion, White Cotton left Dallas to become Tennessee's run game coordinator and defensive line coach. Quinnen will enter the 2026 under Christian Parker and new defensive line coach Marcus Dixon. Now, Quinnen enters the first full offseason in Dallas and a new defensive under Christian Parker, believing there is still another level of reach. I want to be better, Quinnen said. I want to do better, and not for myself, but for this team. That last part is what matters. Not for himself, but for the entire team. The coach Quinnen once screamed at was waiting for him when he became a Cowboy, and the 12-year-old boy who was told to hold his family together is now being asked to help hold an entire Cowboys defense together. Quinnen Williams, number 92, a 4-time Pro Bowler and now a Dallas Cowboys. If you like this, be sure to like and subscribe, and with that, I'm out. Peace.